Welcome to Practice Probiotics, Thrive Together interview series. I'm joined here by my dear friend Matt Wynne and Dena Smiles. We were having a little chill mag in part one about various things, fermentation related, probiotic related. We touched upon growing, kombucha, various other things, so feel free to check back to part one. And we're just going to delve a little bit deeper into some of these things. So, Matt,
yeah.
So earlier on, we spoke a little bit about how we met and how you came to be head fermentalist at Practice Probiotics.
Wow, okay.
And you also touched upon the fact that you're a grower.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really interested in this. I'm interested in kind of why you grow,
yes,
and what it means to you.
Okay.
So what's the deal?
A number of years ago, I did a lot of research into what you call commercial food, and I discovered that when we say healthy food, it's not necessarily healthy food in terms of pesticides and things like that are on our foods in our commercial supermarkets, and I made a conscious decision that I wanted to stay away from that as much as possible. And I've got a history in the family of great growers. My granddad was a great grower, and I wanted to not only get in touch with nature again, but to discover what it's like to go through that cycle of planting a seed, to putting it on your table and feeding your family and your friends, and not only the satisfaction of doing that, but also the health benefits of it. So I went from putting a strawberry plant in the ground and the odd beetroot here and there to it became an addiction for me. And the fruits of your labour and the satisfaction that you give your family, and you're giving them something that's nutritional, that's pesticide free, in clean soil and all them things. It was just a roller coaster, because it made me want to grow more and more and more and more and more. And for me, growing is the satisfaction of being, one, in touch with nature, and two, you're putting something into your family's mouths that's actually food, that's not been, generated by a commercial supermarket or in a factory. And I think it's important that people rediscover that.
It needs to be. I mean, it is being reintroduced in lots of different places with kids.
Yeah.
I've been involved in a couple of projects where we've gone to schools, taken it from the ground to the plate.
Yeah.
But once you get kids involved with that, it's amazing, isn't it?
I think it's a great starting point, because most children, you speak to children, I've actually spoken to children myself, they don't actually know where their food comes from.
No.
They just think it comes from a supermarket. But how did it get to the supermarket?
I've worked on projects where kids didn't know that apples grew on trees.
I know. I think it's important that as a collective we reintroduce them to the basic structure of nature and what the purpose is of that, and why it's such a beautiful thing to incorporate into your life. I'm very blessed that I've got 3 children, and my youngest son in particular, he knows more about growing food than most adults. And he's 4 years of age. I think, it just goes to show you that if you teach them real life at that early age and what food is, I think it sets them up for life.
And yeah, totally. They just get the bug of it anyway, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they just get a bug, and then that's it. It's like, and that's what we need for the future generations, because we've missed this whole, there's this whole kind of like generational group of people who have just been living on takeaway foods, convenience foods, whatever, and just...
I think it's lack of education as well. I don't think people understand how easy it is to grow. Okay, some things are a bit more complex and some things need certain environments, but we spoke about it, as friends, we were just been chinwagging that, if everybody just grows that one vegetable, just that one thing, it would make a massive difference to the community. And, I've got a friend of mine who's got a couple of takeaways in town, and I introduced him to a book called All You Can Eat in 3 Square Feet. And now he's a full-on grower.
Yeah.
And this man, never grew anything in his life.
Square foot gardening.
Yeah.
It's like so easy.
Yeah, and growing upwards.
Yeah.
Not just necessarily outwards. And, that was inspiring for me, that this guy, who's never even thought about growing it. You know, he read that book and just went, wow, there's a whole new world out there. And now he's incorporated that into his communities, where his friends and his family doing it. And I think that's what it is. It's just that spreading the word and setting that seed, no pun intended, to encourage people to do that. And I think, you know, as a society, we'll all benefit from that we don't have to rely on commercial supermarkets that are, I will say out loud, you know, putting poisons onto food. You know, it's really, really important. And it's the younger generation as well that we need them to discover what it is that they're eating. Discover it. And I think once we do that as a collective, I think it's going to benefit, you know, them and their children and their children's children. And yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah,
it's so easy.
You can completely change that thing with kids anyway. As soon as you give them a seed to grow, they watch that seed grow and it turns into tomatoes or something. It's like, they love it.
Yeah.
It's like they might not have, you know, they might have turned their nose up at tomatoes before, but because that's come from their hand and they've helped it and watched it grow, they're much more likely to, like, you know, get that yam down the neck. Yeah.
I think for me as well, it's like just how empowering it can be. Just this idea that, I guess something that I think about quite a bit and feel quite strongly about is thinking about living in, you know, 2018 now. And the last few decades of the rise of sort of like the corporate kind of consumer kind of society, and the rise of the food industry, and I touched upon this a few weeks back. Well, obviously with the rise of the food industry, we've been bombarded with advertisements and propaganda that's been deceiving us quite purposefully, to do with like our understanding of what food is, and we've been given all sorts of myths and lies about what's good for us and what's not good for us, and that's had a massive detrimental impact upon people's health and well-being generally. And this idea of living in a consumer society where you're encouraged to sell your labour, often in jobs that you find soul-destroying, meaningless, mundane, which contributes to people's stress levels and like the rates of depression that exist, so that we can get these little tokens, so that when we step out of the workplace, rather than doing things for ourselves, we just pay other people to do them for us, and often in ways that are like highly inadequate and not good for us. Whereas if we get into this mentality, bringing it back to like, you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. From a young age, you can do this yourself. And then you've got a child who grows their own food. They feel that sense of magic and like this beautiful kind of miraculous process, which not only kind of engages them with nature, but engages themselves with their own sense of being a part of nature.
Yes.
And that can help them and us reconnect with who we are, what we are as a species.
It's just one big loop, isn't it? It's just one big loop like that, and we've broken that loop. We've disconnected from it by.
And the irony of all that is that you know, I mean, I'm self-sustainable for what, 9 months of the year, 8 months, something like that.
Pretty much,
yeah.
So for those that don't know, I mean, are you operating with a big allotment? Have you got staff?
Right.
Like, what's the crack? What's the deal?
My children. Slave labour. Yeah, I know what you just said. I've got a very big garden, but in terms of actual growing space, not that much. Obviously, as you learn more about growing food, you learn how to utilise space and companion plants and all them things that I'm sure we'll talk about in future talks. It's about executing that space that you've got. What can I get out of that space? All right, I can get this out of the space, so I'm going to do that. And when that space is available again, I'm going to use that space again. You know, and it's that element. So in terms of space, you can grow on your window ledge, and that's what most people don't understand, is that, you know, you don't need a big garden to do this. But when you do, how can I put it? When you understand that it's not about the space, it's about utilising it, then you want to win a chicken dinner all the time, you know. So
plant dinner.
Yeah. So everyone should just do it. Just do it. You know, you've got nothing to lose. And the irony is, once you become sustainable to that level of effect, you don't have to go and work 40 hours to go to your supermarket to buy your food. And it's that element of it. You see, it's like, yeah, 2 or 3 hours a day in your garden, you're probably going to save 50, 60 quid.
And with that in mind as well, man, all of these like positive kind of feedback loops. So this idea that obviously by spending some time engaging with your food, growing your food, then that's saving money. You're saving money, and therefore that means that's less time that you have to spend doing something that you don't really find very fulfilling.
Yes.
And you are then kind of just not in a situation where you're living a lifestyle which is contributing to your disease that you spoke about before, and all of the kind of mental health problems, and it's therapy, right? So it's something we've not really spoke about yet, but I'm not knocking it. But you get people, understandably, and maybe rightfully so, maybe it's right for them, who can afford it, and not everybody can afford it. They might spend 50 quid a week to see a psychotherapist, and that's that. But there's a lot of people that can't afford to do these things, but there are things that we can do. There's lifestyle changes that we can make that can contribute significantly to like helping us just feel better. And gardening and growing is there's few better, right?
Absolutely.
In my opinion.
And it's not just that. What I've found is, I can only speak for myself, is that when you grow your own food, you actually have more respect for food. Like a lot of people, if someone goes off the fridge, they'll throw it away.
Yeah.
It's that element. Whereas
you won't go to a supermarket and get some although I know supermarkets are now doing things like wonky veg, like veggies and wonky. Do you know what I mean? They're packaging it up as wonky veg. Oh, that's great. But there's that thing of they won't go and buy something that had a little bruise on it or something like that. It has got to look a certain way and appear a certain way. Whereas you grow your own, you realise, it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes and, and you'll still eat it.
Yeah.
Because it's so precious. I think with the economic thing, that's a massive thing that we've really got to start getting our heads around, because I do loads of work around food poverty and looking at, families on low incomes, etc., who maybe are having to use food banks and all that kind of stuff, which in essence, food banks, for all the good that they do and what they're there for, to fill people's bellies, they're also pretty toxic, because you're looking at tinned food, you're looking at just white goods, flour, bread, white bread, all these kind of things. Which, it might be putting a dinner on somebody's plate, but it's not doing them any actual good at the end of the day on a level of their nutrition. Whereas you get a family and you say, okay, here's 2 days kind of teaching you how to plant some seeds, Here's some seeds which cost what?
Not a lot.
And engaging them with that, and then this whole other process comes about, the magic of it and the excitement of it and the preciousness of it. You keep that going and start that as a root of something. That's revolutionary,
It's empowerment to people.
That's what we should be doing. I'm not knocking, the fact that there's food banks and things like that, because it's totally necessary in the culture that we've got going on right now.
Is it necessary though, when you think about the amount of food? I mean, I've not checked the statistics recently.
I think
but
it is.
Half the food in the world is thrown away.
And that's another project that I've been working on, which is basically supermarkets have so much surplus, it's unbelievable.
But do you think it's sad that they would rather throw that in the bin than give it to somebody?
Well, there are projects where they're giving it to people. That's what I'm saying. That's what I've been involved in the summer. Which are, holiday hunger programs where, kids in the summer holidays aren't getting meals because they would usually get it at school, free school dinners or whatever. So there are these projects where various supermarkets giving their food to community groups or whatever to do these food programs so that people got, food in their bellies every day. But these projects, they're not what they seem at the end of the day, because for the community organisations to be involved in these projects, they have to pay the supermarkets to take that surplus off the supermarket's hands, it's shocking. So, on so many levels, it's there's just so much that you could go into on
just to
levels.
chuck this out there with this, because this is not only is this fascinating and interesting and really, really relevant, I just think it's crucial, right? It's crucially important. And we're looking at a situation where, if we just take a little step back, and we're talking about economics, but if we think about the amount of money that it costs the NHS that's spent on dealing with the vast array of different sort of 21st century diseases that have come about as a result of various lifestyle factors. So we've already touched upon poor diet and nutrition as a result of the food corporations and the rise of the food industry, how everything's so sugar laden, how we've got all of these processed foods which are contributing to loads of different problems. We spoke about how all disease begins in the gut. All of these foods are really contributing to poor gut health and dysbiosis, which is contributing to a massive long list of different problems, which is costing the NHS a huge amount of money, right? So if we're mindful of that truth there, that fact, and then we think about this political context of like living in austerity Britain, where you've got major concerns of people living in poverty, well below the breadline, ironically again, like well below the breadline, do you know what I mean? People that can't afford to feed their families for a week. And so, yeah, on the surface, I'm not going to knock food banks. I think it's good that people can access something which is going to alleviate their hunger and stop them from experiencing like serious hunger, you know what I mean? But it's still a problem, right? It's still a problem. And if based on what you're saying, Dena, as well, if a fraction of the money that's spent on dealing with these diseases through the NHS was spent, this is just a thought off the top of the head, there's much better ideas out there, I've not thought it through, but I think it's pretty self-evident that if some of that money was spent on setting up some of these projects that you're talking about,
that's what I mean.
You could end up with much more sustainable projects where families are empowered with knowledge and with skills so that they can actually sustain themselves and their families for generations to come, because these skills can be passed on obviously through the families. What do you guys think though? I mean,
that doesn't help the big corporations though sell their products though, does it? It doesn't help.
I think
and is that the bottom line then?
I think it starts with education. I think it starts with making people realise how easy it is to create an environment where they can grow their own food, and creating the domino effect. I think that's what it is. And I know that as a community we're going to look at doing things next year and encouraging people to do that. But I think it is that, where people are so distracted with, it's not just a distraction, but it's lack of time, because we live in a what people consider the rat race. So people don't have time to stop for a minute and go, I'll plant my own courgettes. I'll plant my own tomatoes because Tesco's is open, and I'm not advertising Tesco's. I can go there and get them, and I can be back home in 5 minutes, and I can eat them. And it's that.
Yeah.
I think it's encouraging people to
there are projects happening like that. In Nottingham, we've got some really good stuff going on. We've got the Nottingham Good Food Partnership, which is addressing these issues, right? So they're set up specifically to go into community and say, where is this poverty? What's going on? How can we address this? Right, what projects can we get going to get people to engage with where the food's coming from, and also to take responsibility and become self-sustaining in that way.
Yeah, and with this then as well, I mean, with Praxis Probiotics, like the strapline, our kind of little slogan is thrive together, right? And there's this idea that people can feel quite isolated, they can feel disempowered, they can feel alone, they can feel like, right, I know that it would be great if I did this, I know it would be great if I did this. Like you said, people are in a rat race, people are time poor, they're stressed out and they're tired, and there's a huge amount of pressure on them to just try and handle the basics. I feel massive empathy and solidarity with people that are in these sets of circumstances. That's why I would love to see more and more and more people enjoy the benefits of actually doing these things not alone, but together. And whether there's funding for projects, which to me is really important, I want to see more of that, or if people were to take the initiative, try and reach out to their neighbours more, where appropriate, where possible, do you know what I mean?
I think
it's
we've
not convenient depending on where you live and that kind of thing, but we're all immersed in communities, we're all kind of packed and concentrated into various sort of urban areas, various residential areas, suburban areas, whatever, where there's loads of human beings around us, but there's a divide and conquer thing going on, and people don't always know their neighbours and that kind of thing. So just the simple act of trying to reach out a little bit more, that can be a highly political act. This idea of just getting to know your neighbours a little bit more, sharing ideas with people, saying, oh, do you know what, I've been thinking about this thing, I don't know how you feel about this, but how about we get together and have a little chat about if we can make our lives easier. Do just by pulling together a little bit more.
I think we've lost
and
that
that's where you
sense
start
of
to
community,
see that solidarity and that sort of strength, you know, and you don't need funding for that. I mean, of course, I say this mindful of people's socio-economic circumstances, do you know what I mean? But it can be like a small amount of money. And like we said, you know, people can save money. I mean, shopping at the big supermarket ain't always the cheapest game in town. You know what I mean? Spending your monies on microwave ready meals. You know what I mean? Compared to, you know, buying some seeds or bits and bobs. I appreciate this ain't always the simplest thing to do logistically, but when you really look at the numbers and really get your head around the possibilities are actually really, really exciting. It might take a bit of initiative and it might take a bit of proactivity. But there is a world of possibility out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, and that's what we need to start working on, isn't it?
I reckon so, man. So I guess, you know, these are things that people are doing up and down the island. That's exciting. You know, there's an awareness of the problems that exist. We can talk about the food corporations, we can talk about the food industry, we can talk about the pharmaceutical corporations, we can talk about the medicinal model of the NHS and how it can not always do what's in line with people's best health and well-being needs, yeah, despite the good that they do as well at times, yeah. But there's so much that people can do and people are doing, and that's what we're all trying to do here, right?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And
there's cause for hope.
Yeah, I think one of my to-do lists for next year is, you know, as a collective, is to get families together and, you know, stay off a dozen, whatever, and start there. Mm-hmm. You know, there's especially in the area, you know, where we are now, you know, there's so many people that need help and support and probably have never looked at doing things like this. And I think that will create more of a community vibe, because I don't know what you guys had in terms of a structure, but I always remember knowing my neighbours when I was younger. You know, next door but one would always borrow you some sugar, or
that kind of thing.
I'm not picking up sugar, but you know where I'm coming from.
It is.
There's none of that anymore. Well, I'm not saying it's not there, but it just seems to be lack of it. You know, and I always remember growing up, and my granddad's friends would always bring a bag of veg round. Or, that's what we need. We need that. You know, and I think, you know, we'll do it, because I think when people see that and you lead by example, they get on that gravy train.
It is. It just needs to be, those models need to be like being brought out again and just like being shown this is possible.
It's the line, isn't it? It's like, right, so you've got this line here, and we're sat over here on this part of the line, and everything's rubbish. My life's rubbish. Okay, well, let's have a look on the other side of the line and let's see what's over there. Oh, that's not too bad over there. I like that. It's that. It's stepping over that line into normality, into nature. You know,
I think for me as well, what's really, really important, and generally for people's well-being and people's health and like fulfillment, and, you know, when it comes to this idea of trying to thrive, you know what I mean, living a life that's beyond survival. You know, we want to survive, but you know, life is precious, life is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And the potential to enjoy like a joyous, like fulfilling, flourishing existence, it's there. Do you know what I mean? But we are so disconnected from each other, from nature, from meaningful work and various other different things, that some simple acts actually can really help us like reconnect so many of these sort of like lost connections or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? So this idea of just you're looking over the line, and then you see people actually just coming together, and it might just be as simple as they come together once a week to have a bit of food and catch up with each other and find out how each other's doing. As a result of connecting, seeing each other, being able to look at each other in the eye, in the flesh, do you know what I mean? Away from social media just for a little bit, you know what I mean? Actually kind of get to know about each other's lives, what people care about, what makes people tick and that sort of thing. Then you start to feel that sense of community, you feel that sense of belonging. We've talked about the kind of therapeutic benefits of growing, which are profound, just like re-engaging with the natural cycles, being connected with the earth. The same things apply when you connect with community, do you know what I mean? And that's something that I feel is like crucially, not just important, man, but like quite urgent. Like
I think as a species, we are naturally, subconsciously loving, and even what you consider the evilest guy or girl on the planet, I still think there's love in them. You know, and I think when you rediscover that inner love and you project that out, nature naturally, it's natural law, isn't it? It comes to you. And I think when people start seeing these things happen in their community, they're naturally drawn to it because it's normal, it's natural. It's not something that's been created for you. It's there. You know, I always say to people, nature never lies to you. Always tells you the truth.
Nice.
And it does
It just is,
every year.
isn't it?
It just
It
is.
just is.
So I'd rather trust that because I know it's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and it would never ever lie to me. And I think it's that element that people need to rediscover.
Beautiful.
Definitely.
One thing that I want Practice Probiotics as a project to be is something that, you know, we bring people together. We have conversations like this. We talk about things that we think are important, and we try and spread knowledge, and we listen as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like a mutual process. We're trying to learn from members of the community. We're trying to engage with the community. We're putting on various different events. We put on community fundraisers and things like that, as well as, you know, producing the highest quality, 100% organic, biodynamic, fair trade, where possible, ethical fermented produce in the form of fermented vegetables, probiotics, salsas, chilies, kombucha, coconut water, kefir, etc. Yeah.
Good plug. Good plug. I like that.
Cheers for that.
Just reel the whole lot off.
Yeah. But we practice we aspire where possible to kind of like practice what we preach. And if we're talking about these great ideas, we try and implement them. And what I'd like to kind of invite anybody watching it, wherever you're at home or in the cafe or on the train or whatever it is please get in touch. And if you've got any ideas that you'd like to share with us, so that we can kind of like help promote them or act on them, which is most important to myself. And I know all of us really, you know, we like to kind of like walk the talk, do you know what I mean? And please get in touch, and then we can explore these various ideas and projects together, and we can see if we can actually kind of like proactively try and build these communities that we're passionate about. Before we dip, we've got about a minute left. Dena,
Yeah.
anything you want to say about what you're up to? Obviously, Probiotic Love is your project.
Yeah.
And you know, any?
Not really. Apart from I'm helping you guys out with your krauts and stuff. I'm focusing on my kombucha, and also working with various groups and stuff like I've just spoken about, all to do with food. You know, like I said, I've got a real interest in food poverty because of where I'm from and the way that I grew up, especially. And I just want to connect all them dots up and bring all that together, really.
If anybody wants to find out more about what you do, where can they do this?
I haven't got a website, but I'm on all the standard social media stuff. Facebook, Probiotic Love. Facebook, Dee's Pop-Up Kitchen. Facebook, Go for Mental. And Instagram, Probiotic Love.
Wonderful.
That's me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Me and Matt are going to be at the Thrive Festive Fair, which is a fundraiser for the Padley Group, who work with the homeless as well as various other vulnerable people living in Derby City, on December the 1st. That's going to be at the Ukrainian Centre on Charnwood Street, so you can catch us there if you have a little chinwag or check out some of our delights. Big shout out, Dena Smiles, thank you for joining us. Cheers. Matt Wynne, thank you for joining us. Big shout out to Gav, the cameraman, and much more, who's made this possible. Have a wonderful time, and let's keep thriving together.